Hello there. My name is Yuval Green from Sasquatch Productions, and yeah, I. So if you don't know what's going on, if this just randomly came in your feed, as is the attempt of the live stream, about 40 minutes ago, uh, at the time of recording this. What basically, this long and short of it is, I wrote a story from. I was publishing it. It's a fan fiction about Bakugan. Is it like essentially bringing the three generations of Bakugan together? All three of these guys here, all three of them together in one story, fighting the same threat. Kind of like how Power Rangers has their like big events where they bring back all the previous generations of Power Rangers. Is that but Bakugan? Uh, so at the end, once the story was coming to an end, so I've been publishing this story on Archive of Our Own, or AO3, as I'm going to call it. Uh, but, so, and it was getting pretty popular. For a safe for work fan fiction that's in a smaller fandom on AO3, it did pretty well. Uh, so I had the idea that at the end of the story, once the story, like, I upload the final chapter, I'm going to do a live stream to essentially like answer any questions the readers may have had. Uh, that stream is the one that started at 10 a.m. today, but I waited for half an hour. Feel like I was gonna wait for 15 minutes, but I decided to go for another half hour in case someone did turn up, but no one did. So I decided I'm not just gonna leave you guys hanging. I'm gonna record what I was gonna say in this stream, so that you guys at least have something from this. Uh, well, originally we were gonna start with the Q&A, have people answer the questions, but obviously no one turned up. So if you do still have questions about the story, go ahead and post them in the comments on this video, and I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Uh, so now this is the second part of the stream. I wanted to reveal, like, so at the end of chapter 2 of the story, I reveal that any original Bakugan uh, written into the story, I'm going to illustrate them and reveal the artwork once the story concludes. And then once I got the idea for the stream, I decided, now might be a good time to. This might be a good time to give a little preview of what they look like. Uh, so so I went ahead and I spent all of yesterday uh, drawing these. They're not the best. They're not the best illustrations. I will admit. Right before I'll preface it by just saying that, but it's a general idea of what I imagine these Bakugans to look like. Some of them are new evolutions of existing Bakugans. Some are completely original Bakugan. But now let's begin. This is going to be in order of appearance. So the first new Bakugan we met is in the very first chapter, Praetor Helios, the Gen 2 equivalent of Viper Helios. And yeah, you can see I also drew the ball forms, not just for Helios, but for all of them. So that's Praetor Helios. He obviously we only see the one in Pyrus. We then so then in chapter 2, we also meet Tyrannoid. Is so this guy, I actually tried to make him like in real life, but I didn't like 3D print the a model for him. but I couldn't figure out how to use fusion. I'd need some help in order to make that happen. Maybe one day. Um, so next is Arshipo. She was introduced in chapter 4. She was actually. Let's go back to Tyrannoid for a second. Obviously, Tyrannoid is a theropod with those big blades on his tail. And what's funny is, it was always weird to me that Gen 1 never had a T-Rex, like a theropod Bakugan. It only took until Gen 2 with Trox that we got one. So I decided, so I thought to myself, what would a Gen 1 dinosaur theropod Bakugan be like? What would be a cool theropod Bakugan for Gen 1? And I ended up landing on Tyrannoid. Now, funnily enough, even though his name is Tyrannoid, he's more based on Carcharodontosaurus in terms of his like head shape and stuff. But yeah, so that's Tyrannoid. Let's go back to Arshipo. Arshipo is based on the like Appalachian cryptid called the Talipo. Basically this like story of like an old hunter going up to a cabin in the woods that he normally goes to. He runs into this weird creature, shoots off its tail, and then cooks and eats it. Then later in the night, it comes back into his room, demanding its Talipo. Like, I want my Talipo, and then it ends up like ripping him open to try and pull the tail out of his stomach. Which is where in chapter 11 you actually see a reference to that story with the ability ability card Amputation Reclaim, where Arshipo's tail comes off and is forced into Praetor Helios's mouth. At which point, Arshipo like uses like dark magic to like phase through Helios's stomach and pull the tail out, dealing a ton of damage. It was a pretty scary scene, honestly. So next up, in chapter 7, we got to see what has happened to our boy Drago after Mectanium Surge. In the Gen 1 timeline, this is 10 years after Mectanium Surge. After Mectanium Surge, Dan ended up in a location called the Bakugan Sanctuary, which is the birthplace of all Bakugan. Every single Bakugan from Gen 1 that's ever lived was born here. So, because Drago was spending so much time in a place essentially like overflowing with natural energy, as a result, that same energy that's like responsible for helping create the new Bakugan, it ended up influencing a new transformation that I call Zenith Dragonoid. Now, I don't know if you guys picked up on it yet, if you're watching, but he actually has elements from a bunch of different forms of Drago. Like, so he's got the classic Dragonoid main horn. I also gave him these kinds of horns from Neo Dragonoid. He's got the chest plate from Blitz Dragonoid, the leg pieces from these little pauldrons, and the leg designs are based on Titanium Dragonoid. He's got the wings of Classic Dragonoid mixed with Helix Dragonoid. And he's got the metal plating running down his belly from Delta Dragonoid. The tail tip is, I think, an original design. I don't remember if there are other tails that look exactly like this, but Drago does usually have a trident tail. Next, we finally get to the main boys of this story. First among them is Riftborn Leonidas. he and Vladitor are like the main two Bakugan of this story. Essentially, so to give the rundown, they were fighting, and because they were causing so much destruction, they got essentially kicked to what I call the space outside reality. It's like a subspace between the three dimensions, between the three universes of Bakugan. And because they were spending so much time there and fighting there, their bodies transformed into this, and their powers grew stronger than ever. It's a bit hard to tell, I think, but Leonidas does have 4 wings now. I just thought it'd be cool, honestly. And all these like markings on his body, these are supposed to like glow, and you'll see in a second. Vladitor has something similar. Yeah. Speaking of the wings, though, these little dots are supposed to be like a star pattern. Like there's little dots of light on the membranes of the wings, inspired by Safijiva from Monster Hunter. Vladitor has something similar on his cape, which you're going to see right now. This is Riftborn Vladitor. Obviously, his design is based on Battle Axe Vladitor, which is like the most recent evolution, just like Riftborn Leonidas is based on Omega Leonidas. So, yep, he has more of the glowing markings on his body. Not as many, because like he's supposed to be the dark Bakugan. This gem is also supposed to glow, but these are the axes that he uses as his main weapons as well. He maims a lot of Bakugan with those things. If you read the story, you'll know. So next up, we've got Canopoid, who's he shows up for 1 chapter. Essentially, like he's a bit of a roadblock at first, but then Shun essentially recruits his help to get Skyrus back. Because when they were initially trying to stop Leonidas and Vladitor's fight, Shun didn't have a Bakugan, because his partner from Mactanium Surge went back to the wild. So Canopoid here, he has a habit of this Bakugan is really tall, and he has a habit of like disguising himself as part of the trees. The Shun from Battle Planet goes along with the original Shun on this quest to get Skyrus back. So, and they end up finding one of Skyrus's feathers caught on like a branch near one of Canopoid's legs, which if you look at down here, they're made to look like tree roots. So like his feet are usually like dug into the ground while he's waiting for something to try and climb him. And that's when he strikes. But obviously, this dude's no match for, like, he's not all that strong. He's a bit of a bitch, honestly. But he does lead them to Skyrus, and upon rejoining with OG Shun, Skyrus ends up evolving as well into Eternal Skyrus. Admittedly, this is the one that I had like the least ideas of what to do with the design. I essentially just I took Storm Skyrus, modified it a little, put in the like flaming chest that I described in the story, and like surrounded it with flames. Again, this is the one that I had the least ideas for in terms of the design. But yeah, I think she looks decent. Could have drawn it better, given time. Oh well. Next up is Helios Sigma. So, as a result of the story, as a result of like events in the story, Spectra at one point has 2 different Helioses at the same time. The Praetor Helios that we saw earlier, and the Infinity Helios that he had in Mactanium Surge. Yes, they are 2 separate Bakugan. So what happens later in the story, Spectra isn't able to get them to cooperate, so instead they merge the two Helioses into one Bakugan. And that ended up being Helios Sigma. They gave him the wings from Praetor Helios and the turbines from Sigma, from Infinity Helios. And his tail is a combination of Praetor Helios' tail and Infinity. Praetor Helios' like barbed tail, and Infinity Helios' trident, pokey thingy tail. Yeah, that's Helios Sigma, and which means we're coming up on the very last Bakugan. This is Onyxius, and he's so big he doesn't even fit in the frame. He's basically he's inspired by like Shenron. He was the first Bakugan to ever be born in the Doom Dimension, 1,000 years before Vladitor, who himself was born 1,000 years before Leonidas. When he get at the end of the story, Vladitor like tries to gather an army to try and like conquer the world, but they trap the army in this gulch on Gandalia and completely demolish them. So Vladitor is like, all right, fine, I'll do it myself, and he goes to the perfect core to attempt to resurrect Onyxius. So they try to stop him, but he's ultimately successful. Onyxius is resurrected, and he has become the perfect core incarnate. Not only does it mean that he's the strongest Bakugan in the room by far, but also it means that he can change his attribute at will. Actually, whenever he's not doing that in a fight, he is actually a white one. The same kind of thing that Naga and Wyvern were back in Battle Brawlers. He doesn't really have a set attribute, and that's all the Bakugan that I created for this story. Oh yeah, I also wanted to release this artwork I made for the human characters. I had a bit more time to make these ones, obviously. You see, this is Ellen. She's the caretaker of the Bakugan Sanctuary, and she's very prevalent in the story. And over here we got Keiko. Basically, in the invasion of Naga's army into the human world, Leonidas' original partner was killed in the attack. So Keiko here, she was like his friend in school. So he gave Leonidas to her, and they ended up surviving the attack together. Of course, then Leonidas went to New Vestroia when the Perfect Core was created. So they didn't see each other for years. Now that Leonidas is like trying to undo the destruction he caused, he says he'll only do it if he can do it with a human partner, that being Keiko. The reason why these look so much better and have they look a lot better than the previous drawings, is because I actually put these in my Art Fight account. I participated in Art Fight this year, and I had these two on the list of characters that people could draw. No one actually drew them, but oh well. So what's coming next in terms of my writing? Well, first let's talk about what's going to happen with Bakugan in the future. I'm not completely done with Worlds Collide. I'm done with writing the story, but I'm not completely done with Worlds Collide in general. The idea I had is I wanted to take the first chapter and turn it into an animatic, because I want to turn Worlds Collide into a show, like an official Bakugan show. And I'm going to take the first chapter, turn it into an animatic, and take it with me to Spin Master, where I can pitch the show to them. I'm going to use the animatic as like a proof of concept. I'm also going to point to the success of the story on AO3. As for my writing, I actually have 3 other fanfiction ideas that I want to run with. The first is a sequel story to The Legend of Korra, taking place in the universe of Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is an alternate timeline jumping off the end of the show. Basically, what happened is not just after the end of the show, after the end of the comics as well. Korra and Asami ended up going on another trip to the spirit world, but for a reason that's still unknown, the spirit portals closed behind them, and 30 years passed after that, and everyone thinks the Avatar is completely gone now. So the main story that's just the background context for this version of the world. The main story follows this detective he's a private investigator, but he's been brought on by the police to look into a series of murders. It's a sort of like crime mystery drama. It's more of a mystery, honestly, than a crime drama, but it's still pretty fun. There's gonna be a really fun twist in the story a bit later in. I'm not gonna say anything about that, but it's gonna be fun. The next one I had an idea for is a fanfiction for Dauntless. Now, this game, if you don't know what this game is, it's essentially like it was created to be like a competition to the Monster Hunter games. Which, let's be real, there's very little actual competition for those games, but I still love Dauntless. I actually had an idea for a story where we follow this like this like pair of siblings. Their home is destroyed by a behemoth, a very special behemoth that I've designed, and it essentially like becomes like their end goal to find this behemoth and destroy it, and they end up becoming slayers to do that. This behemoth that I've created for the story, it's part of it's a neutral element behemoth, but it's got some really interesting abilities that make it very, very dangerous. You'll see once I get to actually writing it. Last but not least, I had an idea for a Pokemon fanfiction. Now, I know the stigma with Pokemon fanfiction. This is like the reason but hear me out. The reason I chose the XYZ poster to show it off is because this story is effectively like a spiritual successor to XYZ in terms of like the storytelling. The main thing is this takes place 4 years after the end of Pokemon Journeys. Ash is now a teenager, and recently the Demo region, which is like a region that's like it's to the west of Galar. It's geographically based on Ireland. It was previously like very isolationist, because of the extremely powerful Pokemon living there. But now it's decided to open its borders to the people of the world. So Ash obviously wants to visit this region, so we follow him on his adventures through this bizarre, dangerous region. The main thing that makes this region so unique and dangerous is because it's the only region in the world that is home to what are known as the Three Supremes. Now, the Three Supremes aren't individuals. The Three Supremes actually refers to specific Pokemon types that only exist in the Demo region. Those types are Ancient type, Angel type, and Demon type. I'm gonna have a whole Pokedex written out for that story, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I was originally gonna have people vote on which one I'm gonna write first. I'm gonna write all three of these, but the poll was to decide which one I'm going with first. But I think I'm just gonna go from left to right. I'm starting with the Avatar fanfiction. This one is so. Let me tell you all the titles of these actually as well. So, the Avatar one is titled Avatar Monstrous Pursuit. The Dauntless one is titled Dauntless Beyond the Zenith, and the Pokemon one is called Pokemon North and South. And that pretty much covers everything. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully next time I do one of these, someone actually turns up. Alright, have a nice day.